Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Bicep community call of April 2024. I know it's May. Like I said in the invite, we will have two calls in May, one at the beginning, one at the end. Since we haven't had a call in about 2 months, I will repeat this. What's the community call for? It's for you, not for us. Get updates on topics that we otherwise wouldn't cover in our calls and content. And this is a place to have more casual connection with our community. Please raise your hand or ask any questions in chat. We have all of our engineers here to answer any questions, comment on anything. We love to get feedback on everything that we're working on. Okay, so O.27. We skipped the O.27 release last month and pushed it out for another month because we had some small releases here and there to fix some breaking changes. So this is O.27 and preceding releases. These are some of the updates. We have other bug fixes and other little features, and that will just be shared in the release notes. But the more exciting ones are F12 published source module is now GA. I'm not sure if everyone knows what this is, but our engineer, Stephen Weatherford, has been working on this, and he gave a quick demo in January. So if you want to see that demo, you can go to our YouTube channel for the Bicep community call of January and see that there. There were a few bugs with user-defined types. So we had some bug fixes there, two of which are fix importing tag unions from compile.json. This fix allows the import closure compiler to take account for arms discriminator constraint for type declaration to type expression conversion and for reference collecting. Johnny's been working on these, so if there's any other questions that you have, put them in chat. He'll be here to answer them. The second bug fix is support including imported types and user-defined tagged unions. This fixes the situation of if imported types are used as type references for members of the union, that results in an unhandled exception. So we're able to fix that. It allows tagged union member resolution to support imported types, resource-defined types, and type property accesses. And the third feature, the spread operator. Anthony will talk about this a little later and give a quick demo on what this is. But yeah, this is pretty exciting. I'll leave that for him to explain. Okay, our feature releases. Yeah, things keep getting pushed out a little bit, unfortunately, like the modular parameters and dynamic type updates. Engin is going to talk a little bit about modular parameters and the new design that he has, and he would love to get some feedback on that. So yeah, that's why it's getting pushed out, but we want to make sure it's best quality and it's exactly what you guys want. O.27, to be determined. We have little features here and there. We're not sure when we'll be able to get everything released, so that's why it's to be determined. Just want to make sure that we're as accurate as possible. Cool. Yeah, I'll pass this off to Engin.
Thank you, Stephanie. Can you move to the next slide, please?
Sure.
Thank you. So, hi, everybody. Good morning, good evening, wherever you are. My name is Engin, and I'd like to show you an interesting feature that I'm working on for quite a time now. It's called modular parameters. I'd like to talk about a scenario first so we can see like how this feature can help us. And in this scenario, let's imagine there's a big project that we need to manage many resources like service plans, web apps, function apps, some Redis cache, and some SQL databases, storages, things like that. We, as good engineers, use infrastructure as code tools like Bicep to manage those resources on Azure. Probably we have many Bicep modules, sub-modules, things like that, like Bicep files. And we have configurations for those Bicep modules to deploy them as Bicep param files. So we have the configuration in Bicep param files. And if we look at our Bicep param files, we might notice that we have some common parameters duplicated in every Bicep param file. For example, like the location, project prefix, environment, or tags, like things like that. With this modular parameters feature, we introduce a new keyword called extends, which allows us to put common parameters in a single bicep param file. Let's call it shared bicep param. It could be anything basically, but in this example, I'm going to call it as shared bicep param, and extends the current bicep param file from the shared one. So let me switch to VS Code and do a demo it. This must be the screen. Oh. Can everyone see my screen? I hope you can see.
I think it stopped sharing. Can you try one more time?
Sure.
Yeah, we can see
Right.
it.
Perfect.
Do you
Perfect.
think you could scroll in, or I guess zoom in a little bit?
Sure thing.
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe even one more time. Cool.
Okay, sounds good.
So we have, let's imagine we have a bicep file for a storage layer, which requires some parameters, right, in here. And also we have another bicep file uh, for database layer, which requires, more or less the same parameters, like quite similar parameters, but have some differences as well. Like if I open them like side by side, like this one and this one, we can see that, like some of the parameters are the same, but we have like some extra or some missing parameters in between this bicep module. So let's imagine this is our scenario. We have only two bicep files, but it could be more than two. So I created this shared bicep param file, which I could rename it as something else. But in this example, I named it as shared bicep param. And in this file, we have the most common parameters among the bicep modules. So location, project prefix, environment, and tags are live in this bicep param file. And we have two bicep param files. If I come to here, and here, for each of the layer modules, and each bicep param file for these two bicep modules extends from the shared one, like the shared bicep param. So the common parameters live in the shared bicep param, and we have only the missing parameters in the layer bicep param files. So during the deployment, parameters in the shared one and the layer one, these two files, will be merged and used together. And as a quick side note before my demo, Azure CLI, when we initiate a deployment with a bicep param file, runs bicep build params command under the hood and use the compiled JSON. That is the output of the command. So to keep the demo simple, I will run the build params command directly. The output will be used in the deployment if we initiated the deployment using the Azure CLI, but I will skip the deployment part to make the demo simpler and quicker. First, let's build the storage layer bicep param file. And if I check the storage layer, we see that we have we extend from the shared bicep param, so there will be three parameters coming from there, and one parameter coming from an environment variable, and then we have another parameter as well in here. So if I run the command which I prepared beforehand here to make it easy, as you can see, I ran the build params command over the storage layer bicep param file. It will, so I just ran the command, and if we check the output, which will be here in a second, and beforehand I already have it, ready here. As you can see, the parameters from these two files are merged and used in the deployment, and the environment variable is evaluated as well, things like that. So it is like these two files are merged, and if we initiated the deployment using the Azure CLI, then this will be the parameter file that will be used in the deployment. So if I initiate the same same command, but this time for the database layer, like this, then, and again, I prepared already the JSON, the output. As you can see, the parameters are also merged for these, two files, like the database layer bicep param and the shared bicep param. And now we can see them here. So we can, if we need, like if I go to the where is it, the database one, for example, if we want to override the value for a parameter, we can do that as well by simply having the same parameter in the like the layer bicep param or the main bicep param. For example, here I can say that location, I want it to be East US, for example, right? So in the shared bicep param, the location is West US. So every bicep param file that extends the shared bicep param will have the location as East US. But in this specific layer, I'm going to overwrite the location to East US. So if I rerun the database layer build command, then the location will be East US in a second, and it is already here, as you can see. So when we run the build params command, we see that the overridden value of the shared bicep param is here on the layer bicep param or the main bicep param. And we have some design decisions and some limitations as well in place for the initial release of this feature. But we are going to actively look for the signals from the community and the customers to make some changes and to relax some of the limitations as well. And I will mention them at the end of my demo. And as a second note, for so far bicep param files and bicep files are tightly coupled, so it means that every bicep param file should have reference to a bicep file in the using statement. But the shared bicep param files in this feature cannot have a reference to a bicep file because we don't use them directly in deployments, but we use them in the context of another bicep param file. So we have to, so we have this like using null statements, which relaxes this tightly coupled nature of bicep and bicep param files. But it comes with a price. So since we don't have a reference to a bicep file, we don't know the parameters list, their data types, like things like that. So if you have a using null statement, then we have to turn off the most important validations, like check the values to see that, if they are in the correct data type or not, for parameters. So this is one of the like design decisions that we made, and we'd like to hear more what you think about this approach. And maybe as a third and final note, I'd like to mention that for some projects we may have bicep files that requires parameters super similar to each other, like not quite the same, but more or less similar. In that scenario, we can directly use one bicep param file which has the common parameters and the using null statement in the deployment. And if there are some like missing parameters for that specific deployment, we can provide them over CLI arguments. We call that feature as supplemental parameters, and I have a sample here. You see, like I have this shared bicep param file, and like in this example, we compile the shared bicep param file first, and we end up having the shared JSON file. And I think I already have it here. As you can see, that this is the output of the build command for the shared bicep param. And if we have missing parameters for some of the deployments, we provide them over CLI arguments. So in this example, for example, we have like 2 layers or 2 bicep files for 2 layers, one for web app layer and one for cache app layer. And we use the same bicep param file, or the output of the bicep param file, and we provide the missing parameters in the deployment. So we can reuse this shared bicep param file that we have in many deployments. We also love to hear your scenarios and your feedbacks about this feature as well. Yeah, this is pretty much my demo. Stephanie, can we go back to our presentation, please? I'd like to mention, some.
Yeah, and there are a couple of questions, so I will read some of them after you go over this slide, and I think we have a hand up as well. So yeah, we'll go over questions after you finish this.
Okay, so I'd like to mention some important points, like the draft PR is up over the link on the deck. If you're interested in the future, please go ahead and leave your comments and stay tuned. Stay tuned in the upcoming weeks because the PR will be polished, and it will be ready to get merged. When this feature is merged, it will be behind the feature flag, and you will be able to use it. At the beginning, there will be only one extent statement allowed in a bicep param file. Technically, we can allow more than one, but to make it simpler and scoped, we decided to allow only one extent statement. If you have a case that needs more than one, please let us know. You can leave a comment in the PR. Currently, we need to compile the shared bicep param file that has using null statement to use in deployments on Azure CLI. We'd like to hear your feedback and scenarios about using the shared bicep param file directly, that has a using null statement. And we may have more than just parameters in the shared bicep param file, which means the bicep param file that has using null statement. But when we compile them, we only care about parameters, especially when we extend the bicep param file or using this like shared bicep param or referencing shared bicep param file. We only care about parameters. If you think it would be better to have, I don't know, like variables, etc. as well extended, please let us know your scenarios. You can leave comments in the PR as well. Yes, so pretty much that's all for the modular parameters feature. I'm personally so excited to see these features. Please let us know what you think, and especially we'd love to hear your scenarios and how this feature can improve them. So Stephanie
Awesome.
mentioned
Yeah.
there's
Thanks,
one.
Engin. Yes, there are some questions. So I'm going to go over the questions first, and then have the people who raised their hands ask their questions directly. So there was one about what would be the precedence if the param exists in both files for, I guess, when it's extended out. And I think there was another question about hierarchy as well. Yeah, if there was a param that exists in both, how would that be handled?
Yeah, so I'm going to call it as main bicep param or the layer bicep param, how you call it. If we have the same a parameter with the same name that we have in the shared bicep param, then the main bicep will override it, the value. So it will always have priority.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Hopefully that answered the question. If not, you could put that in chat. Do both files need to be in the same folder? Can we reference files elsewhere?
It doesn't have to be in the same folder, but we have to provide the path of the shared bicep parameter that we can access, that's the only need.
Good. Since using is required in a bicep param file, how does that work? Is there some kind of override or skip for validation?
Yeah, that's why we introduced this using null, or we allowed null as as the value of the using statement. So when you have using null in the shared bicep param, then it doesn't reference a bicep file, and because we don't have reference to a bicep file, we have to turn off some of the validations, for example, the data type validation and things like that. So that's the way we design this, like using null. Null can be renamed as well. We are having a discussion, name it as more maybe intuitive keyword. But so far it's null, and it means like turn off some of the validations and doesn't require a bicep file or a reference to a bicep file in this like shared one.
Sounds good. And like Anthony said in chat, we are uh, welcoming any ideas that you guys have on renaming null. So
Perfect.
yeah, we'll definitely be looking at those. Um, Someone likes to use a hierarchy to compose parameters files. Will this be supported?
Hierarchy. I mean, that could be only one extent file in a layer bicep param. So like there's an inheritance chain, but it only has like two ends. So if I
I think the
understand it,
I think the
I'm
question
sorry.
specifically is like, can you have A extends B extends C?
Oh, I see. Oh, that's a good question. Um, from top of my mind, I want to say technically that's possible. Um, but I'm gonna get back over the chat when I double check it.
Okay, sounds good. I think another one, with using null, can you still do imports?
When we using null, you mean using null, right?
Yes.
Again, from top of my mind, I want to say yes, technically, but I have to double check just in case, and I will get back my answer over the chat.
Okay, sounds good. I think you already mentioned this, but I will ask this question again. Can you extend multiple files?
So technically, we can have more than one extent file in a layer bicep param, but we allowed only one for now. In the future, we may allow it like more than one, and the extended file technically can extend from another extend file, but I have to double check it first.
Sounds
So
good.
before I say, or I commit something, I want to double check and then.
Yes, makes sense. Sounds good. When you do the extend, could it check the parameters there and give errors on the extend line in the extending param file if the params aren't valid? I think that's confusing wording. Do you get the question, Engin? Otherwise,
Yeah, I think I
okay.
got it. So if we have a shared file which has, for example, a location parameter in a data type string, and what would happen if we have a bicep parameter that extends from that one, but requires a location parameter from another data type. So in this case, when we initiate the deployment will fail because we bring the parameter as is from the shared one without changing the data type. So if the data type is not the one that the bicep file requires or the deployment needs, then the deployment will fail with the proper error message, like the location parameter is not in the correct data type, things like that.
Okay. Hopefully, Joe, that answered your question. If it didn't, you could either raise your hand or put it in chat, and I could read that out. Can you use the extends from one shared bicep param file into another, or even use the extends command more than once in the bicep param file to get different parameters?
Yeah, so technically we can do that, like having more than one extent file in a bicep param file, but we allowed only like as a start, we allowed only one extent file in a bicep param. And the second part is that can we have like more than two file extent to each other? I'm gonna double check and I will get back to you over the chat.
Sounds good. Let me see if there's anything else. I think in our chat, Anthony and Alex have been answering these pretty well, so I'll keep going.
And I will read the chat, and if there's any like unanswered questions,
Yes,
I'll check them as well.
sounds good. I guess while I keep scrolling through the chat, Chris, you have your hand up. I know we answered one of your questions. I don't know if you have another one.
Yeah, so the other question I commented in here before, but I don't think it got commented on. Is it possible to have decorators on the params to talk about merging the merge structure? So right now you've said the lowest level of the parameter wins. So if you have a extend with a parameter called location, the bottom one, the lowest level wins, right? If you have
Yes.
two locations, it wins. My concern is things like tags that are complex objects, right? Right now, it would seem that it would just override it. So if you had a tag and an extend and a tag in the actual parameter file, just the bottom one wins. If we could have a decorator on those complex objects that would say merge these, it would be incredibly helpful, because then we could set a tag at an environment level and a tag at location level, and then a final tag merge that would say this tag object would merge. Now, it becomes challenging when you get into complex objects, but I could see that that would be something that would be incredibly helpful. It also ties into this concept of multiple extends from a hierarchy standpoint. If I have a folder that is my environment level and my folder that underneath that is a location level, you smash them all together and it's like the conglomeration of 2 or 3 or 4 parameter files. And I hate to say this, this is how TerraGrunt works, which is an incredibly successful product in the Terraform world.
Yeah, I like the idea. Do you mind if you like can you do a comment on the PR? So
yeah,
it will be
perfect.
Perfect. And
somebody just mentioned in the chat that you can do some union stuff. Can we? I mean, is that something that we can do in the parameter files to say? Well, no, I guess you're not, because the extend doesn't give us access to any of the functionality. We can't say that this parameter uses a union as opposed to a override.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think union is in bicep param files. I may be wrong. I'm sorry.
I think union is actually.
I think the challenge here is that we would need to give access to like the base version of the tags property for to be able to like merge it with the parent essentially. So that's a really good thing that we should think through.
But I do
and
wonder
again,
if
I'm not going to be the one that's fixing this. You smart people are going to do it. I just can see the functionality of it.
Yeah, I wonder if as a stopgap you can have like a param called, I think this was just suggested, global tags, local tags, and then union the two of those as a workaround. But I hear what you guys are saying, that maybe we should expose the inherited value somehow.
I know it'll be cool when it's done.
Yeah, and you don't have to hate bringing up TerraGrunt. It's good when we learn how other tools are doing things that people like. That's a benefit.
Okay, let's take one more question because we have some other topics. Hopefully we answered your questions, Chris. I put the link in the pull request in chat. So if you have any other comments, please put them in the draft PR. Vandeep?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thank you for giving me this opportunity to ask the question. So yeah, I am using the basically I started journey of using the infrastructure as a code from JSON, and right now for the internal infrastructure as a code building, I am using Bicep. So in that, one of the issue that I found, or maybe I am wrong on that place, but I want your guidance or help to do the stuff. So basically, let it be if I want to provision the Azure function, right? And in the particular app setting, I want to set up. So there is a particular web job, right? Web job storage is there, right? In it is there a specific keyword, and I can say string concatenation is there. Particular, you started with the authentication type, so something kind of HTTP, then your storage account name, then your storage account key, then something different. Total 4 parameter are there, right? Out of that four, first and last I can manage. The second one, that is a storage account name, that is I can also mention because it is just a storage account name, and I am using the parameter for the same, so I can keep those value. But my challenge is to there when I want to fetch a list value, or like a key value, right? List key value, the key that using that I can authenticate or authorize. Okay, this is the key that I want to, this is ID and this is password, something kind of those line. So when I want to fetch those thing, I am getting error, and I can't able to do the stuff. So basically I want your help for the same key, how I can fetch the value of the list key from the, I can say, a parameter or a something look like that. I tried out with the some of the things. I use the some of by using the dollar and the curly braces and some of the things. So it is giving me something like, okay, it is an internal part of thing. You must have to declare it out of the function. So out of the resource, I also
Vandeep,
declare those things.
sorry, can I interrupt? Can you actually put this in a Bicep issue? I think we're trying to leave the questions just for whatever's being presented right now. We have a Q&A at
Okay,
the end of the call anyway,
yeah,
so we'll leave all questions, general questions there. But it seems like an
yeah,
authoring issue, definitely put that in the Bicep issue, in the Bicep repo. Create an
yeah,
issue for
sure.
that,
And
and we'll have a lot of users be able to help you out with that.
yeah, and by the way, thank you so much for the same. And I also like raised the issue for the same.
Okay.
And I think it's tagged as a needs triage or something kind of thing. But I thought it is a great opportunity to ask the question in the Bicep community call. So that's why I
Mhm.
do that. Thank you so much for that. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Sounds good. Yeah, we definitely want to help you out, but we have some other topics that we want to cover, so we want to make sure we can cover those in time.
Yeah,
But
for
yeah,
sure,
there's
for
some
sure.
people in chat, I think giving you some ideas, so you could check those out and respond to them. Okay.
Perfect. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thanks.
And back to you,
Yeah.
Stephanie.
Thanks, Engin. We really appreciate this. I think a lot of people in chat are really excited about this. But yeah, I will move on to the next topic. So the AVM team, Azure Verified Modules, they will start joining all of our calls. They gave an intro and some updates in the last call, but they're going to be here starting every call forward. I will hand it over to I think it was
Mate.
Mate. Yes.
Thank you, Stephanie. Hi, everyone. My name is Mate Baravash. I'm one of the PMs behind Azure Verified Modules, and I'm gonna hijack Stephanie's screen right now. And I hope you can see it. Can you please confirm it?
Yeah, we can see.
Perfect. So yeah, you just covered the first topic. So going forward, someone from the AVM core team will be here in every Bicep community calls. We are going to be here to answer questions in the chat, gather your feedback, etc. And sometimes when we have something newsworthy to share, like today, we also going to present / demo something.
So with that, the second point is that we are also going to launch our own quarterly external community calls. You can see the short link for the sign up page here. So aka.ms/avm/community call. But in case you forget that link, the way to find it is to come to the AVM website. The link to that is aka.ms/avm. I will put that in the chat window. And then in the left navigation menu, down here at the bottom, you see community. If you click there, you will see the same link that I showed on the slide, and you will see that this first one is coming up on the 21st of May. Now we're going to do this in the same way as the Bicep community call is happening. So we are going to do it in an alternating manner. So the first one is going to be optimized for EMEA and the APJ time zones. So that means that the next one is going to be optimized for the Americas time zones. Okay. So the third topic I have is the first real topic is we want to mention that we have finalized the retirement of all what we refer to as non-AVM modules from the Bicep public registry. And I would like to explain what we mean by that. So before we started the AVM project, in the Bicep public registry, there used to be a couple of modules already published. And these weren't really following any common patterns or common rules. So with the introduction of AVM, we basically jointly decided with the Bicep team that we need the standards, we need to have all the regulation, the pipelines, the rules, everything in place that AVM actually brought into the picture. So we actually agreed that all the modules that were there previously will either be migrated to AVM or retired, at least temporarily. And if there is interest in them, then we are going to revive them as AVM modules. Now, what this looks like in practice, whoops, I didn't mean to advance the slide. Let's see if I can go back. Yes. Okay. I just want to show you the experience first from VS Code. So if you try to use a module, let's call it test, and let's look for the public registry. So right now, here you can only see AVM modules. If I scroll up and down, it's only AVM modules. Previously, before we retired the non-AVM modules, there were duplicates, let's say, for things like storage accounts and key vaults. That was quite confusing, so that's gone by now. And the good news is that, of course, if you select something here, let's pick this version. You are probably familiar with this feature, but I still wanted to show you. If you stand here and hover over, you can click on the View Documentation button, and that will directly lead you to the correct AVM documentation in the Bicep Registry Modules repository, which is the repo that backs the public registry. Now, if you want to start poking around here, and you are still looking for the old non-AVM modules, you still see them under the modules folder. We have all the AVM modules in the AVM folder, by the way. So you might want to poke around, and for any reason you want to find the source code, let's say, of cognitive services, you will see that it's gone. So you might panic. You still see the README file here. It has a disclaimer that says that this file has been replaced, or this module has been replaced by an AVM equivalent, and there is a direct link here to the equivalent module in the AVM folder. And you might still want to use the source code. So how can you get there? Can you get there? And the answer is yes. Here we have an archived file, and we have that in every single migrated or retired module. And you see all the previous module versions that ever existed. And if you can click on the source link, that basically will lead you to that tagged version of that last commit, in which that old module was published. So the source code can still be retrieved, but it's kind of hidden from the developer experience in VS Code. And we didn't want to break anybody's solution. So basically every single one of these old modules are still published in the registry, and they're gonna still be kept there indefinitely. So we didn't break anything. We kind of removed the hints from VS Code, and the source code can still be found as needed. Okay, so moving on to point 4, we are also glad to announce that the module migration from CARML, the Common Azure Resource Modules Library, to AVM is fully complete. So we migrated all the modules that we planned to migrate. And that leads us to have, as I'm going to show you here in the module indexes, that leads us to have here, as you can see, altogether 132 Bicep modules that are currently published in the public registry. And you see the distribution between resource and pattern modules. Now that I'm here, I just want to briefly show you that we slightly updated this index page as well. So everything is clickable now. So for example, if you click on 116 available resource modules, it will actually lead you to the related page and to the related filtered view. And that gives me the opportunity to also show you this new feature, which we also just implemented, that similar to how it was in the Bicep registries, or I would say the non-AVM BRM modules index page, we are now showing the latest available version in form of these badges here. And if you click on any of these, it gives you this small JSON snippet that shows all the published versions. So this was a request through feedback that we received. So this is also implemented now. Okay, and with that, I'll hand it over to Jack for point 5.
Awesome. Thank you, Marte, and good afternoon, good evening, and good morning, everyone. So just want to cover the topic of WAF alignment. So those of you who are already using the Azure Verified modules will know that we have quite a strict set of rules in the AVM specifications that talks around WAF alignment. So I'm just going to share that now. And if we look into the shared specification, I'll just zoom in a couple of clicks here. If we look at the second shared requirement that we have for our modules across Terraform and Bicep, that we say that modules should set their default input parameters and values to align to high priority and impact recommendations where appropriate and applicable. Obviously, not everything is applicable. Some are locked down, or some are, require you to configure other dependent resources. So therefore, they're not applicable to you. What you would then need to do, so what we've then done is said we've aligned to these various sets of frameworks, so the well-architected framework, the reliability hub, the Azure Proactive Resiliency Library, which we're only taking the product group verified recommendations from, because this is a community initiative that we're working through. We're also using MCSB and Defender for Cloud. But we have a detailed guidance here that we've recently updated in what does AVM mean by WAF align. So we've gone into a bit more detail here because it's quite a high level term. And could be seen as a bit clickbaity. So we really want to provide that next level of detail so that everybody understands what we truly mean by the modules will be WAF aligned. So you can go here and read this, or if you go to aka.ms/WAF/AVM, I'll put a link to that in the chat in a minute. You'll be able to find the link to this. But for an example, anything that is a simple string or a Boolean value that we can change to something simply like the TLS version, or key vault should use RBAC, we will set those in AVM modules to be defaulted to the right values as per those frameworks above. But anything that, for example, container registry should use private link, that obviously requires a private endpoint, a VNet, a DNS zone, all of those things to be set up as well. So in the resource modules, we won't default these to on because they require external and other resources that break the constructs of a resource module. But you can obviously enable them. We have our shared interfaces to make enabling those easy if you do want to enable those things. But we leave that down to the module consumer at that time. We're using the awesome tool for PS rule to help us test for these. So if any of you have seen some of our modules, if I just go and pick one out of here and we go to one of our resource modules, you'll see that if I pick container app as an example, we are running tests automatically on all of these. So no new versions can be published if they don't meet our checks with PS rule. So if I pick the relevant workflow, so container app, and I'll zoom in again. You'll see here that we run this on a schedule, but we also run this on every commit. So if we look at one of the last commits, you'll see here that these steps here are all using PS rule to basically test our examples and the default values being met. So if we look at it here, for WAF alignment, we'll see that the reliability recommendations have been enabled, and we get all of these PS rules running for this resource. So you can, build trust in that these modules are being thoroughly tested before they're even allowed to be published. So if any of these steps fail, you'll see that the publishing step, all of these are dependent on passing. So not only do we do static validation tests using Pester and PS rule, we then deploy all of the examples that are shown in the examples folder in the module. And then if all of those things pass, we will then go on to publish a new artifact to the registry. So you can build real confidence in if a new version appears, it's definitely been tested before you can go much further. So yeah, that's just a brief update on AVM and WAF alignment. You'll see not all modules have been fully WAF aligned yet. There's something we're working on right now, and we're closing the gaps. But you should see more, and also PS rule will benefit as well because we'll be adding to the rule base there, and we'll be working closely with Bernie and the awesome work that he does. All right, I think back to you, Stephanie.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks, Mate. Really appreciate it. Looking forward to seeing you here and looking forward to your community call as well. Let me reshare. Can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
Cool. All right, Sydney.
Hey guys, so today I'm going to be talking a little bit about our proposal for Bicep deploy. So this is going to be a new feature surrounding how to deploy Bicep files very, very early in conception. And so everything you see will be a prototype, and we're just looking for feedback on if you guys would want this and would use this. So take everything with a grain of salt. The formats can change and so on. Stephanie, can you go to the next slide? So our number one goal here in building this is that we just want to remove friction and errors from rewriting CLI commands. So when you're typing like bicep deploy and then a bunch of arguments, it's really easy to get lost in the arguments you're typing, especially as we noticed with the introduction of deployment stacks. So this is a proposal for a feature that would try to ease this friction. Next slide. So as you can see here, you got your regular Bicep deployment for resource group commands here, and then for a deployment stack. And when you look at it on the documentation, it's very simple. You just have a few arguments, but when you're trying to type that into like the bash or something, it gets really, really long, especially as you have more and more like deny settings, excluded actions, and excluded principles for the deployment stack side. That command can get really, really long, and we've heard that it's easy to make mistakes, and you type the wrong thing, and now your deployment is not working. Next slide. So this is a mock-up for what the Bicep deploy would look like. On the left, you just have I have a very, very simple Bicep file, and then on the right, we have an example of what the deployment file would look like. We're still determining where this should live, and we're looking for feedback on this. But essentially what you can see in the top image is that you have all those parameters and arguments you would typically do in the command line. You have here in this deploy object, and it has the file name. So you're deploying main.bicep, as well as the deployment name, the scope, location. So all those things you typically type into the command line are all right there. Right underneath that, I mocked up what that would look like for a stack. So same sort of concept, except now you're going to be able to put in the excluded actions and excluded principles, which I see I put a typo in. Anyway, so the goal of this is to simplify the deployment commands. So in the bottom left, just an idea for what that would look like is you would then just deploy the deployment file itself. And similar to in Terraform, you have Terraform apply. It would just be a simple way to deploy everything from there, have it in like source control, make that repeatable, and so on. Okay, so next slide. So now that you've seen that, we're looking to get some feedback on this. These are a few questions we have, and if you would like to go to the link, I can put it in the chat. There's a form that you can fill out to answer these questions. So the first question we're trying to answer is, should this be its own file type or a part of Bicep param? Originally, when we started thinking about Bicep deploy, we were thinking about it at the same time as Bicep param files way back in 2021. But obviously now param files are a thing, and now you've heard the modular parameters proposal. So just wondering where you think this would fit in. The second question is like, how do you see this becoming a part of your workflow, and how would you incorporate this into your pipelines? And then finally, are there any additional features that you need here to make this useful to you? So yeah, if you could go ahead and fill out this form, that'd be really, really helpful. Thank you. And then next slide, Stephanie, is also mine. The second form I have for you today is for the deployment Copilot research sign up. So some of you may have been involved in the first round of Copilot research that happened a few weeks ago. We are putting out requests for people who want to take part in the second step of our deployments Copilot research. And this will involve more of going through mockups and walking you through use cases regarding Copilot. So if you'd like to take part in this, I'm putting a link in the chat for that. Just fill out that user Zoom and our research team will reach out to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Sydney. Yeah, if you could put both of the links in chat, that would be great. I think you put the one. Oh, you did. Okay, awesome. Cool. We can move on to the next topic. Anthony?
Hey there. All right, so I've got two topics. I think just to get started, I've got a very quick one, hopefully, which is based on a recent GitHub issue about descriptions. And here I'm just looking to get some really quick feedback from the community. So in the example I shared, top left, this is the current like authoring experience for types and descriptions. The verbatim string syntax in Bicep, which is the 3 single quotes, the design of it as of today is basically like all of your white space that you have inside that syntax is preserved, which kind of makes sense for, inlining bash scripts and things like that. However, I think for, inline descriptions, it's kind of neat to have everything aligned with the @description decorator. And so that's what I've put an example of in the screenshot I've shared in the top left. And so I think people's expectations when they hover over that is, we generate markdown, assuming everything is kind of indented in line with the @description. And so the expectation, or my understanding of what I think people's expectation would be is on the top right, you have kind of markdown. So I've used a markdown URL or markdown link, and that should be rendered as like hello from Bicep, and it's a clickable link. The reality of it is because we do preserve white space, the indenting is interpreted as a markdown code block. And so we actually render what I've shared under reality. And so you see hello from Bicep, it's rendered as like using a monospace font, and we're not actually rendering the link properly. So I think one thing we can't do is we can't change the behavior of the verbatim string because people depend on it for things like inlining bash scripts. So I think if we want to rule out introducing a brand new syntax, I think the options we have are basically to, under the solution section, we can either normalize the indenting when we render hovers, which means basically giving you that top right expectation. The part that I wasn't sure about is like how we actually generate the ARM template JSON itself. If we were to normalize the indenting, then you would end up with a different result in the actual JSON. So my solution number 2, you've got hello from Bicep, you've got new lines between each of the words. So if we kind of strip out the indenting, that's what you're going to end up with. If we leave the indenting alone, then you're going to have what you currently have today, which is like spaces before each word. So I wanted to see if anyone had any issues with us picking solution 2. I think if anyone has any strong feelings about it, I can share or Stephanie, if you don't mind sharing the link to that GitHub issue in the chat to collect some feedback on it.
That's good.
Yeah, I think my hypothesis here is that when people are indenting, as per my screenshot, like you're really just looking for what seems intuitive, which would be, everything is kind of indented from 4 spaces in. or that's kind of how we take the string. Okay, so that's a quick poll, and I think we can probably collect feedback asynchronously by the GitHub issue, unless anyone has any strong opinions to share in the chat or to come off mute for.
It looks like we've got 2 opinions and both like 2. So that's 100% for 2, seems like, out of 2 opinions.
Okay.
We have a hand up. Bunny?
Hi. It may be a tiny bit off topic, but this is something that's been bugging me for a little while. Where in descriptions, if we have text on multiple lines, on the hover, there used to be a problem where that wasn't formatted correctly, and that was fixed in a previous fix, I think I raised several months ago. But when that was fixed, when you now hover, multiple lines now show on the same line. And I don't know what's going on with that. And I can provide a screenshot in the chat just to show what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful. Might even be worth raising a GitHub issue for, just so we have the, we're able to repro it. We have the Bicep. If you haven't already raised a GitHub issue.
I will do. It's just not annoyed me enough, but seeing this coming up here, I thought it'd be a good time to mention it. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it'd be great to have the details. I think a decision we made is that anything between those two, the string and description is being rendered as a markdown string, and so all of the kind of markdown formatting rules are going to apply. I know markdown can sometimes be a little difficult to work with in terms of like what gets split onto a new line. So if I had to guess, I would say it's some sort of like markdown quirk is causing that behavior, but we can definitely take a look into it.
Thank you. I'll get it raised.
Awesome.
Thank you. Cool. Let's do, are you, hopefully we got all the feedback on this and we could move on to the next topic.
Yeah, I think that sounds good.
Cool.
And it's also me.
Yep.
So I was going to talk a little bit about the upcoming spread operator. I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully everyone can see this. Would someone mind confirming? Yeah, cool. Okay. Yeah, so I'm not going to go into too much detail because I think our release notes will cover the ins and outs. But so one of the upcoming pieces of functionality we're adding to this next release is we have various new list manipulation functions. We have a few changes to some of the Lambda functions to add indexes, for example, like map and select, I think, or filter. The spread operator is a new operator that we're adding to the language. And so I wanted to just kind of explain what it is. And there's a kind of long-standing issue about setting or skipping properties that I wanted to kind of cover here and collect a bit of feedback on how useful we think the spread operator could be towards solving that problem, or whether we need to consider a new solution to it as well. Okay, so I've got a very basic Bicep file. I'm not using the spread operator here. I'm just going to deploy it so you can see the results. I've got 2 objects and I'm just outputting the second object. I've got 2 arrays and I'm outputting the second array. So this is what you expect. I'm just outputting that object directly, outputting this array directly. So the spread operator basically allows me to take the contents of another object or another array and essentially inline it into the second array. Conceptually, it's fairly similar to the union function. It's just been special cased in the language. The main difference between it and the union function is the union function actually does a deep merge. So if you have 2 object properties with the same name and complex values, you may actually end up with the values themselves being merged, which sometimes may not necessarily be what you want. So this may be fairly familiar to people with experience with languages like TypeScript. And I think, well, actually, I think many languages have this concept. So here is the syntax is the 3 dots here. That's the spread operator. Here I'm basically saying include the contents of object A in this object here. And similarly with arrays, like the syntax is similar. So here I'm going to put the contents of array A in between 1 and 4 in this array. So let's just hit deploy again. And we've now got object B is the kind of combination of those 2 objects. Array B is the combination of these 2 with, like, array A where I've put it. With objects, there is I could do something like this. I could actually choose to override the foo value here. And so the kind of ordering that you put things in the object basically dictates who wins in the case of conflicts. So that's the kind of basic concept. Like I said, there should be release documentation available. So if people want kind of more detail on how it works, I would check that out. The thing that I was interested in discussing is this problem of set or skip. So this is an example I've taken from the long-standing issue we have for set or skip. The challenge we have today is there are some resource providers that interpret null differently to like a property of an object being omitted completely. So this was one of the user examples that was shared. In this case, there's a property called NSG deploy, there's a property called root table deploy, and depending on whether this is set, we either want to pass in an object or we want to pass in null. And I think the intention is if null is passed, it has no impact on the subnet. However, the RP interprets this specifically as like we want to unset this property entirely, not we want to kind of merge with the existing property. So there's been kind of asks for a concept of undefined, like a kind of special case keyword to specifically differentiate between setting it to null and not setting it in the first place. So there's been some kind of discussion on like ways to implement that. We haven't actually addressed that specific issue yet. But one thing that the spread operator does make a bit easier is that concept, because so taking this example here, you can rewrite it using spreads. So in this case, I can say you can think of this as a kind of subset of the properties I want to exist. If NSG deploy is true, include this property. If it's not true, don't include it. So then when I actually carry out the spread here, this is basically going to have the intended effect. It's going to say, if this property is true, then we're going to include it. If not, we're going to skip it. I think the downside is the syntax. Like if you're not familiar with spread, this syntax is a little bit complex to wrap your head around. And so that's what I was interested in collecting feedback from the community on is do we find, and perhaps it will take some time to play around with spread before we can answer this question, but do we find spread kind of solves that sufficiently for our needs, or do we still need to go think about adding a specific like set or skip operator? Here I've assigned these things to variables. You can also kind of inline it like this. And if you're familiar with TypeScript, this might be a pattern you're used to. If you're not, this can be quite like there's a lot going on here, and it can take a bit of getting used to. So yeah, I think if I'm going to share this link in the chat, it's a very old issue that's been around for a long time. It's had a lot of upvotes and a lot of comments. So I would love to get some feedback on whether we feel like the spread operator is enough here, or whether we need to go and implement something more specific.
We have a hand up.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry. Yeah, no, Stan?
Yes, thanks, Anthony. I'm having this question because when you use union to do this thing, you basically use IntelliSense on the properties. With the spread operator, is that fixed somehow?
I
you still use
so.
the IntelliSense. For example, to remove the ID, should when you press space, should it show ID or not?
No, I don't think we've done anything specific there. That's a great suggestion though. That's something that we should look at. Yeah,
it's otherwise if you have some complex objects and they have more nested objects below, you start to lose everything below, and that becomes a problem.
Yep.
Especially when new versions are released and there are new properties, you basically have to comment all this part and start adding the property on your own just to see the schema. Otherwise, you have to go and check the documentations.
Yeah, that's great feedback, and I think that is something that we should be able to implement. So I'll take note of that.
Thanks.
Sure. Are there any other questions about spread?
I don't think there's any questions, but there's a lot of comments. If you want to look through them or comment on any of them. A lot of people are saying the feature is really awesome. One said readability will suffer from this. Some people say it's worth it.
Yeah,
we have
I
another.
think that's definitely a challenge with spread. Like especially this type of thing can be hard to wrap your head around, I think.
Was there a hand up or was that an accident? There's a comment on undefined. I'm not sure if you want to touch on that.
What is the comment?
Basically, not sure. So someone said not sure if it solves the NSG problem. It more just moves the code block from one section to another. I think an undefined would be a better, cleaner approach. And there's a vote saying that we still need undefined approach.
Yeah. I mean, I would say technically it does solve the problem, but it doesn't. It solves the problem in terms of like it avoids you sending the property to the resource provider. It doesn't solve the problem of being like easier to reason about. Like it's kind of difficult to reason about. So if that's what you mean by not solving the problem, then I agree. It still is a little challenging.
Any other comments? I know we are over time, so we could take one more question or so. Stan?
Yeah, one other thing is that you could probably define something as undefined that is only available in Bicep, and underneath you just use the spread operator for the JSON compiled file. Maybe that's an option as well.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. So we could do some translation from one to the other. Yeah, I think one of the challenges with undefined is you have to reason about what happens with like interactions with other types. Like if you have, if you're doing like a union of something with undefined, or like you have to kind of define that behavior and it has to kind of flow through everything we do. If we can scope it down to like very specific places, then that might solve that problem more. Cool. That's all I had.
Awesome. Thanks, Anthony. Thanks, everyone. This was a really great turnout today, and we got so much feedback and so many comments on everything. We're taking note of all of the comments you had on modular parameters, what you have to say about the spread operator and the AVM team. Yeah, this was awesome. Thanks, everyone, for showing up, and we'll see you at the next community call. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.